Hello Deca fam, welcome back to another news run. It's Liam here to give you the latest. Now it's been over 2 weeks since my last news video, so first let's take a look at how the Steam Deck has been selling, because during this time we've of course had the Steam Summer Sale. So it is perhaps no surprise to see the Steam Deck has remained around number 2 for 3 weeks globally now, although it would be number 1 if you took out obviously free-to-play titles. The UK is still somehow seemingly completely out of stock as well, or is it? Because somehow in the UK it was a top seller over the last week, so clearly there is stock for the UK. It just seems to be getting picked up and purchased as soon as it goes live. And Valve still haven't emailed me back on what is going on with the distribution of the Steam Deck in the UK. But clearly it's good news then, and Valve should be pretty happy with how the sales are going and staying so strong in the face of increasing competition from multiple vendors. I must admit though that at this point even I'm surprised that the Steam Deck is still selling as well as it is. Are you as surprised as I am? Perhaps though it's not surprising then, with how many Steam Decks are being sold, that about 40% of the entire Linux gaming user share on Steam is now on the Steam Deck. SteamOS and Steam Deck absolutely tower high above everyone else on desktop Linux. And we're also seeing that according to StatCounter that the Linux desktop share also finally hit over 3% global as well. So Linux is basically growing everywhere, and no doubt plenty of that is thanks to Proton and the Steam Deck. We did also have a nice stable update recently, but again, no, this is not SteamOS 3.5. There is still no actual hint as to when SteamOS 3.5 will release. The stable update was just really bundling all of the recent Steam client work done in the last bunch of beta preview releases, further unifying desktop Steam and Steam on the Steam Deck. A lot of work in this was going into the desktop mode, but there are some Linux-specific fixes which will affect the Steam Deck as well. On the subject of Steam updates though, a recent beta update for desktop actually added in the ability to show Steam Deck verification status in your Steam library, which is quite a nice touch. Once you enable it in the main Steam settings and library section, you can then hover over any game in your Steam library and you'll see the Steam Deck verification badge show up. Plus, you can also see it in the expanded More Details View button when you're actually looking at a specific game in your library. It's a good touch because quite a lot of people do have desktops as well as the Steam Deck, and just looking at the verification directly in your main Steam library can be quite useful. For fans of the Heroic Games launcher that works with Epic Games, GOG, and you can sideload anything else into it like cloud gaming as well, some fun news here is that Amazon Game Support is coming over to it with one of their next releases. The work has already been merged into the project, so hopefully it won't be too long before we see it in an actual public release. Now, I personally really love using the Heroic launcher. It just makes managing third-party games on Steam Deck so much cleaner than messing about with manually adding them into Steam. How about some Proton upgrades? Well, I've got some news for you on that front as well. We've actually had 2 Proton experimental upgrades since my last video. The first from July 7th included they fixed up game stutter in Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris. They fixed keyboard input registering with a delay and getting stuck in Wild Hearts. They fixed up Escape from Monkey Island getting minimized on mouse click, and this one's really interesting. They fixed up Overwatch 2 stopping to register controller inputs after an online match has started. So while that game is not even on Steam, plenty of people have been playing it with Proton on Steam Deck and desktop Linux, so it's nice to see them fix third-party stuff as well. Valve also implemented English speech recognition for Phasmophobia. They fixed Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition failing to launch after another recent game update. They fixed Microsoft Flight Simulator crashing in accessibility settings. And 2 Proton 8 regressions were solved in Proton Experimental as well, so logging in online in Gears 5 works again, and Doom Eternal no longer crashing with ray tracing enabled on AMD, VLK, and NVIDIA, so that's for desktop. The second Proton experimental update was on July 14th. That just had 2 fixes, with New World not starting after a recent game update, and they fixed Aura Fate of the Ages missing some audio cues. Now, the real fun one on the subject of Proton, though, is the company Codeweavers, who Valve contracts to work on Proton, wrote a pretty interesting blog post recently about how they fixed up the silly indie game Poo Shooter Toilet Invaders. Now, we had a good laugh about this because not only do Valve and Codeweavers work to fix big AAA games, but tiny indie stuff like this as well, that can help fix other titles. The funniest part, though, is by fixing up Poo Shooter Toilet Invaders, it helped Valve to find an issue where on Steam Deck, when you select delete Proton files, it didn't actually remove certain files, those that had a colon in the name. A colon. Come on, the toilet jokes are just writing themselves. Also, ProtonUp-Qt, the little tool that you can use to easily install other compatibility layers like GE Proton, had a nice small upgrade recently as well, where it expanded support for the Heroic Games launcher. It also improved finding the Steam root folder, so for some of you where it didn't quite work right, that should hopefully fix that, and it fixed up some other stuff behind the scenes as well. It's a really useful tool for getting GE Proton for those games that just don't work right with Valve's normal Proton. Now, just a couple of bits of actual game news here for you, starting first with Minetest. It's a voxel game engine, and the game Mineclone 2 that was made for it was recently upgraded. This is basically an attempt to create a completely free and open source Minecraft, so it costs you nothing and it doesn't need a Microsoft account. It's highly moddable and it performs well too, so I think it's worth a look if you do like your sandbox building games. There was also a small update for Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun that went live recently to improve Steam Deck support, as the cinematics now actually work on Steam Deck and desktop Linux. That was actually one of the only things that needed fixing, so it's nice to see another fun shooter that works well on Steam Deck get upgraded, and when I actually went back to try it again, it clearly performed better than my initial look as well, so that's nice. An upcoming game I wanted to highlight is called Black Dragon Mage. It is absolutely my kind of bullet heaven survivor-like insanity. So it's got all the usual crazy action you've come to know from survivor-likes, with all the ridiculous abilities as you fight off hordes. But here they're also teasing something about dragon eggs in their content and something about a sort of Bomberman inspiration. Weird. With some 16-bit inspired visuals, plenty of creatures and big crazy boss fights, it does look like a lot of fun. The developer even emailed me to mention that Black Dragon Mage was designed and developed with Valve's Steam Deck in mind. Another cool little survivor-like is Samurai Survivors. This one's actually been available since April with full Linux support, and the developer recently upgraded the game for full Steam Deck verification. Over the last couple of months, the developer worked on just fixing up bugs. They've improved text readability, improved the gamepad support, fixed scaling issues at 1610 resolutions, and more. So thanks to all that, Valve slapped on a Steam Deck verified sticker with the native Linux build, which is great to see. A final one for the game section today is the no VR mod for Half-Life Alyx, because a new release went out and it's continuing to be very impressive. They've not implemented all of the features just yet for the Steam Deck, but they do plan to, and they do have a separate download just for the Steam Deck until they manage to add all the features in. But some of what's new in the latest release includes they added support for Alyx Pockets, they improved collisions, they've added a bunch of newly supported mods, they've improved the view models Sway and Bob, and they've improved interactions throughout all the levels, the ladders are easier to use, there's Steam Deck stability improvements, and much more. I absolutely love Half-Life Alyx. I completed it with my Valve Index. It was one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. So if the no VR mod enables more of you to experience and enjoy it, then that's a great thing. Now, I don't actually have an Asus ROG Ally, and I'm still not going to be buying one, but for those who are interested, you might want to check out ChimeraOS. It's basically a SteamOS-inspired Linux distribution directly aimed at couch gaming and handheld devices, and it boots directly into Steam's big picture interface, so it very much looks and feels like SteamOS. They do have various nice touches and upgrades and special software that they've made themselves, and the latest release brings with it initial support for the ROG Ally. So it might be worth a look if you want to use Linux on it instead of Windows. Finally, for those of you who need to build up a bigger game library, Humble Choice for this month has some pretty nice games to pick up, like The Outer Worlds, Temtem, and Yakuza 4 Remastered. My partner link will be in the description and a pinned comment, so you can go and grab it if that interests you. That's it for this week's video though. Thanks as always for stopping by. I hope you found some of that interesting, and I'll see you later.